Right, today we're going to go over how to make functions, what we did last class. So first, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up my traffic light code. It doesn't really matter which one I'm using here. I'm just going to use this one because it's a nice demo because I can use, I have two sets of lights that I need to program. So it really lends itself well to using functions. So remember, functions are chunks of code or tasks broken down into smaller chunks. So if we think about walking and eating, it'd be doing a function to make you walk and a function to make you eat, rather than just having all the instructions in one area. It can get a little bit confusing. So, I'm going to go into the code. So right now my traffic light is working. So there's my traffic light, it's working, and I don't want to change the function of my traffic light. I just want to clean up the code and make it a little bit easier to change in the future. So we're going to go into the code, and I'm going to look here and I can see that I've got my integers set up, and you can pause this video so your code matches mine up to this point and your wiring matches mine up to this point. And then I've got my pin modes all set up for my two sets of LEDs, and all my code is just plunked into void loop, which is fine, it works, but it's not, I have a difficult time sort of finding where things are working. So what I want to do is I want to break this down into sort of the two states of my traffic light. I want to break it down into when one set of lights is on, and then there's a transition, and then the other set of lights is on. So it'll make it a little bit easier for me I can tweak just the transition timings very, very easily that way. So to create a function, I need to go below void loop. So void loop is actually, it's a function in its own right, but it's a system, one the system requires, whereas I can make my own. I can make as many of my own as I want. So I'm going to create one called void, let's go, we'll say startup. So this is going to be how my lights are going to start up. Now you notice, much like the void loop, I've ended it with a couple of brackets, just like void loop, and I have a couple of curly brackets, which I will then put my instructions into. So the structure of a function, there's really three elements when we define a function. That's what this is. This is a function definition. Okay, so I'm telling the computer what is inside of the function. I haven't called the function yet. The function will not do anything yet because I haven't actually called it in the code. But the function, or the computer, now knows what the function does. So this, when you see void in front, it could say int, it could say bool. These are different data types. Right now, because this function will not be returning a value, meaning I could say return 7, and I would have to make this an integer because the data type of this function would be an integer. That's what it's returning. It'll make sense. That'll make sense a little bit later on. Now we're not going to be messing around with that too much right now, but for right now we are just going to make our functions void because they are just going to do a task and they're not going to talk to another function after that. In the brackets, this is where it gets a little bit interesting. So we can send information to the function when we call it. Just like if we look at the function delay, this is a function, so it's defined somewhere in a library that the computer can access. It's something that's been made for us, so we don't have to worry about it. But we have delay, and then you see the goes bracket, bracket. This is a function call. So the function's been defined somewhere, just like this. And now in the code we're actually calling it, just like digital write's a function. These are all functions that are built in to help us. Pin mode, same thing. So we have to have a semicolon at the end, and we just put in it looks for a variable. So for example, if I took this out, if I sent it without a variable, it would probably complain on me. See how it doesn't like that? So the function, if you put, say for example, integer test, if I try and call this without an integer in there, it will complain. It will not like it. So we're not going to put that in there. And so we're going to put 500 back, and our program should run again. So we want to make sure that for now we're not going to pass any parameters to our function, and it's not going to pass any parameters back. So we are just going to start. We got to think about, okay, how do we want our program to start? Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull. I want my first set of instructions to be the red LED on, which is this one, and the green LED 2 on, which is this one. So that's my kind of my startup function. So I'm going to go cut, and I'm going to put that into here. Now the cool thing about this is what you'll see is that I just took this out of the instructions. So right now the computer is not going to run this. Okay, but what I can do now is I can call my startup function, and it should run just how it did before. So the computer goes and it looks here, and then it jumps down and it goes back around. Okay, so now we are going to create another function called transition. Call it transition1. Doesn't matter what we call it, we just have to make sure we call it again. So same thing, I'm going to make it void. It's not taking any parameters. So now our transition1 is going to be sort of entering into the second stage of light. So I want to take all of this here, and I'm going to pop, I'll just take this whole thing here. Okay, so I'm going to pop that into there. There we go. And then after that, I'm going to say transition1. I'm going to call that function, and we should see it should, after a little while, 5 seconds, there we go. So again, the lights are functioning exactly the same. It's just helping me clean up the code a little bit. It's helping me segregate it out. This will have the functions will have a lot more use later on, but for right now, the immediate advantage is that it tidies everything up a little bit, but it also allows me to reuse this code. So I can call, if I wanted to, I could call then startup here, and it would run that again. Now it's not going to work properly this time because I'm kind of injecting code again, but this allows me to reuse code very quickly, very easily. So you can see it's kind of, so it's all over the place now. So it allows me to reuse code very easily, as opposed to I can just build a really good function that'll do something cool, and I can just call it again and again and again. So I don't have to keep retyping or copying, pasting, or whatever it is. Another advantage of that. So even if this code is really useful, I can easily just paste it 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. But if I want to go and change this value, then I have to change it in each of the times I've typed it. Whereas if I use a function, I just have to change it in the one spot, which is much easier. Okay, so I'm going to create, so I've got my transition one. So let's see what happens here. Green LED goes high. And then what I could do is I could put, I'll call it void second stage. So that'll be this code here. Okay, cut that, and then put all that code in here. And then finally, I will create a function called, actually I don't even need another function. I can just, what I can do, see now I can omit this code here, because this is the same as this here. So red LED high, red LED too low. What I could do so I can just leave that in there. So I don't need that. I can take that out because that's actually already in my setup. could do is I could take this code here. What I'll do is I'll put that there, and we should see, should work fine. Yep. Okay, so now you can see that I've got my code. It looks a little bit neater. It allows me to have everything segregated so that I can change it, and now I can reuse the, I guess I'm going to put start up here, don't I? Again. Start up. There we go. Now I can use that code. I don't have to type it out again, and if I want to change this delay, I just change it in the one spot and it'll work fine. So that is how you use functions. They are very useful, especially as your programs get longer and longer. They are a really good practice to use. So I expect to see them in your programs moving